Hello, South Carolina Writers Association, all of our friends out there on Facebook and YouTube. My name is Casey Whitener. I am the first vice president of our SCWA, and we have been piloting this program called Author's Corner since the beginning of the summer. This is one of the benefits for our SCWA members, where we talk to our authors, our published writers, about their books, their projects, what they're working on, what they see coming down the pipe, and just a little bit more to get to know them. So today's guest is Cat Fitzgerald, and I'm going to bring her into the studio now. We're going to talk for about 15 to 20 minutes about all the things that she's written and what her writing life is like here in South Carolina. So welcome. Look, so you're Catherine everywhere, or you're Cat everywhere?
I'm Kathy in most places, but I'm Cat in the writing world.
All right. So it's nice to see you, Cat, in the writing world. Welcome to Author's Corner. Tell us just a little bit about how you found SCWA and your writing career here in South Carolina.
Okay, thank you. I was invited to attend a meeting at a Chapin chapters where I am by a friend who knew I was a writer, if you want to call it that, at that point. And she invited me, and I'm like, okay, because I'd been working. I knew there was a book inside me that needed to get out, but I didn't quite know how to get there. And she invited me to one of the meetings, and I joined and figured out that there was support out there for people like me that had books in their heads and couldn't get them out and didn't know what to do. And so I took what I had started on and worked on that for a little while. But then I just couldn't get anywhere. And I ran across somebody else at another little workshop or something. And she told me she just said, write what you know. Well, of course, at that time, I took that literally and started thinking, well, what do I know? What have I done? What can I do? And long story short, that became my first novel. But it was that support group, that accountability group, that really got me focused and got me where I've got two books under my belt now.
And that first novel is called What If? So
Yes.
What's it about?
It is about a woman who is discontented in her second marriage, and things are just not going according to plan. She's a bit of a control freak, which I totally cannot relate to. So she starts wishing that her first husband hadn't died. She thinks if her first husband had not died, then everything would be fine, that her daughter would not have made poor decisions and just everything. And so she kind of goes in this, what if Jack hadn't died and all that. And she gets a chance to see how that would have turned out through a little time warp or magical realism, whatever I think that's what you call it, magical realism, and discovers that her fantasy is not quite as bright and shiny as she seemed to think it might have been. So then she's returned to, like, spoiler alert, returned to reality and now grateful for her condition? Yeah, you can say that. I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, and the process that she goes through, because when she ends up in this other life where her first husband is not dead, there's some losses that she experiences that were in her current life, and that's a bit of a shock and some tragedy. But she keeps thinking that she's in a dream and trying to figure out how to navigate this world that she's living in, that she knows nothing about because she was in another marriage for 15 years. And so it's just the focus in the lesson is live in the moment, appreciate what you have, because none of us get do-overs. And sometimes if we got a do-over, we might regret it.
Yeah, so this is a popular kind of approach, right? We've seen right now Disney Plus is running a series called What If that looks at the different Marvel characters and tries to imagine different Marvel characters in different roles.
Oh,
and
I had not seen that.
Yeah, it's really cool. If you're into superheroes at all, it's animated, but if
Yeah.
you're into superheroes at all, it's really cool. Like they imagine at one point we were watching Black Panther, the Black Panther character, only he was in like a Thor type role instead, or something like that. I don't know. It's really strange, and it took me a minute to kind of understand. But those derivations, right? Like the idea that the plot didn't have to go in this direction. It didn't have to be like this. It could be a different way. I think writers are just attracted to that anyway. And so I
Yeah.
imagine that there were people that thought, yeah, of course you want to play with this idea and like see what it might have felt like
Yeah.
for a person to go through that. So
Like,
what
what
if
if the
came
Black
out? Yeah,
what
go
if
ahead.
Black Panther had been Thor instead? That's yeah,
Right.
kind of
Or he'd
bizarre.
been, I can't remember like how they ended up organizing that, but I mean it was interesting. So there's a whole series on it. And there's my daughter calls them like alternate universe, AUs, where
Yes,
and the
yes.
AU storytelling is also really popular right now, especially in fan fiction, where people start trying to reimagine popular characters as having different sexual identities, as having been located in a different place. Like, what if this one critical thing hadn't happened, something else had happened? So I think AUs are really exciting.
Yeah, like what if Adam West had not lived in Gotham City?
Right, exactly. Adam
we
West.
we never have had Batman.
Right.
I
All
hope
right,
some of the listeners know who Adam West is.
but isn't Adam West the actor who played Batman? Wasn't he the one he was the actor that played Batman in the
Yeah, was
television
it? Was he
series?
the actor? So who
Yeah, I
was the
think he was the
character?
actor.
Oh,
Uh,
Bruce
Bruce Wayne. Yeah, Bruce
Wayne.
Wayne.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's it. Yeah, Bruce Wayne. What if Bruce Wayne had not lived in Gotham City? We never would have had Batman.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That kind of makes me laugh though. Adam West. Adam West is like he's a great sort of random character that shows up in a whole bunch of other like Gen X shows. And we see like Adam West randomly showing up and things.
Oh.
All right. So that's a rabbit hole. We're not going to go down the rabbit hole. All right. So
I love rabbit holes. I really do.
but tell us about A Seed Planted, because this is the second novel. It's also up on Amazon, but this is a different thing. Is this magical realism as well, or is it
No,
straight
not
realism?
at all. This is different. This one is mostly told in flashback. This is a woman. Her name's Julia. I call her Juju, and there's a story that goes along with that. And she's looking back on her life with some regret. So what we see, there's a big change coming in her life. She's older now. There's a big change coming, but she's looking back as she awaits the arrival of some people that are going to have an impact on her life. And she's looking back at the choices that she made, some bad choices. She had a troubled, or well, actually a dysfunctional childhood that kind of led her down some wrong paths and making some choices. And so we go back and forth. The book covers from like 1949 up to present day. And that was a little challenging because when you do that, you have to do some historical research, because you can't have a book that spans that broad a spectrum and not cover things like the Vietnam War and the Kennedy assassination and stuff. So
Right.
a little more work in that. But it's more of a family saga type thing. I am working on a sequel to What If. But this one was a different thing, a different type.
So
But
what was the inspiration behind A Seed Planted? Is this something maybe somebody that nearby experienced, or it was just a way to maybe metabolize or catharsis over something that happened for you?
actually, both of my books are a little bit autobiographical. People who know me really well and have known me for a long time know what's true and what's not true. Two of my best friends were my beta readers, and one of them, who's also my college roommate, so we go back a long time, actually called me on the phone, and she's like, I hate to even ask you this, but did this really happen? This particular event, and I knew what she was going to ask, and I started laughing. I said, "No, this really did not happen." She's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so relieved. I thought it would be horrible if you went through this alone, and I didn't know anything about it." And so she was really horrified that this particular event might have occurred, in my life, and she had just, missed out on and not been there for me. But yeah, a lot. And both of the books are somewhat truth telling. And yeah, like I said, people who know me really well know what's real and what's not.
We have that in common because I have a lot of people that read my books that say the same thing, and my short stories and say the same thing. Wasn't I there when that short story happened? I'm like, it's fiction, people. It's fiction.
Yes, exactly.
So
You have to do that because you don't want to get in trouble.
right. Well, so two pieces of that, right? Like Anne Lamott says that you should write your stories, tell your stories, and if people want you to say nice things about them, they should have behaved better. So that's on
Yes.
them.
Yes.
But the other side of that is you really take that, write what you know literally when you start putting yourself in there, your own
Yeah.
autobiographical details in there. And so I'm with you on that. I think that's a very authentic way to come at a story. So what's the reception been like for A Seed Planted? How have you, because it came out like right before or during COVID, so it's been hard to be out there and promoting and selling books.
It has. It came out in February of last year, or into January or early February, and I got one book signing in before the world shut down, and so that was a little bit challenging. I have not been able to get out there and meet, the readers like I was with the first book. Didn't get to have a big launch party thing, so that has definitely been a challenge. But I have a loyal following, here locally, and also family and friends spread across the country that have been very supportive. And there's a coffee shop here in Chapin that's also a bookstore. It's called the Coffee Shelf. And Jerry is very supportive of local authors and artists. And so he sells, our books, and we have book signings there. And so that's that I was able to do beforehand. But just having the books there where they can be seen when people come in the library, there at the library. But yeah, definitely missed being able to, meet people. And I'm looking forward to November 13th down at USC Aiken. I know you're going to be there as the keynote speaker, and Steve is kind of sponsoring that or organizing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of folks that I know through the Writers Association and various places, and even a guy I know that's from up in Rhode Island is coming down. So looking very much forward to that event, to
me too.
get out there and see people.
Yeah, me too. And be face to face once again, right?
Yes.
And with some COVID precautions, of course, right? But then also knowing that we're back out in the real world, right? Like IRL. Yes. We're gonna go out into real life and stop being holed up. So you mentioned you're working on a sequel to What If. So what's that been like? Has that been a COVID project, a pandemic project, or where did that come from?
Yeah, I did start. Well, I had people ask me, because of the way What If ends, just that, like, okay, where's the next book? The way the question ended, or which was kind of a surprise to me, actually, how it ended. I didn't see that coming. But so I thought, I need to write the next chapter. And so the main characters from What If's daughter is the main character in the next book, which is called If Only.
All right. And what's the plan for that one? So are you somebody that writes in your cave and gets your whole first draft done and then starts taking it to group for critique? Or are you somebody that is revising as you're writing?
I revise as I write. And for most of this past year, we were doing Zoom meetings, which I absolutely abhor. Trying to do that in writers group is just I mean, it's a necessary evil. It was better than nothing. But we're back meeting again in the local library. And so, yeah, we bring 5 pages each time and share that with the group and do that. And so I'll take that back and revise those or make those changes based on what the group, suggested, and then go on from there. And sometimes that requires going back and rewriting some stuff that, if it really didn't work. So yeah, I mean, I've got 45,000 words done, but the group is only on, maybe chapter 4 or 5 with me. So I'm writing way ahead of what's being looked at, but that's okay. It'll get there eventually.
Yeah, well, and that's probably the right thing to do too, right? So that we don't end up too derailed by the input that we're getting from our colleagues. You mentioned
Yes.
the Chapin group being so supportive of you from the beginning, and that's just really awesome. I want to give just a shout out to all of our chapters in general. Our
Hmm.
SCWA. If you go
Yeah.
out to myscwa.org, we also have virtual chapters for people who maybe can't get together face to face for whatever reason, or they're also genre or organized. So
Hmm.
we just launched the romance chapter that's starting in October, but we have a short story chapter and a poetry chapter, and so that's kind of cool too to go into those genre based chapters. The folks in your Chapin chapter, do they write the same kind of thing that you write, magical realism and realism, or are they writing memoir? What's the mix like over there?
It is a mix. Most of them are writing fiction. I know one lady is doing a memoir, and I'm trying to think if anybody else. Yeah, actually, there is one of the group that does write magical realism. So yeah, it's a good mix.
And it's so important to have those folks, right, that are going to give you that honest feedback and tell you what's working
Hmm.
and what's not and all that.
Hmm.
What kinds of other things do you think have contributed to your writing getting stronger? I mean, were you before COVID, right? Were you going to conferences? Are you doing workshops? Like where does your writing knowledge come from? I mean, is that your background? Did you come out of a program or something?
Well, I did major in education, but I've been writing since as long as I can remember. And I can distinctly, I started reading at an early age, and I can distinctly remember as far back as second grade. I started out probably with poetry, and I was probably in junior high by the time I expanded into short stories. But I distinctly remember being on the school bus one morning and suddenly remembering that we were supposed to bring a poem for that day's homework, and I had not done it. And I tore out my little, notebook and pulled out a piece of paper, and I looked around. And I wrote a poem on the bus about leaves. Not my best work, but at least I did not get a zero. But like I said, I've been writing poetry and short stories for as long as I can remember, and that sort of got put on hold as I went off to after finish school and then started working and stuff. But I've just always, I guess, been a storyteller on uh, paper. Just I love to read. I would read 24 hours a day if I could stay awake long enough. I'm a voracious reader, and so I think part of that comes from that and thinking, I could do that. And again, I've just always felt like I had a book inside me that wanted to get out. But I do workshops. I love good workshops and conferences, and I follow a number of authors that do also give advice for writers, and they do online workshops, or sometimes just will send you the links to free information. It's awesome how they do that. Tips. So I look for wherever I can, just glean some wonderful information from people who have been doing this for years and years and are very successful at it, and then learning, because this is not one of those reinvent the wheel kind of things. There are people that are out there that know how to do this, and so you cheat yourself if you don't take advantage of that.
Yeah, and many of them very generous with their time, very generous with their tips, with their help, with their instructions. So yeah,
They are.
I'm with you. I'm like that too. I'm just like sort of a student of the schools, right? Whatever's out there
Hmm.
that can show us, how we can get better at this. So you have a blog too, though. It's Cat Fitzgerald. Author.wordpress.com. What kind of stuff are
Yes.
you putting on your blog? Is that part of your branding, as part of promoting your books, or is it something a departure?
It is. It is part of that, but it's also it's an inspirational blog. There's just so much negativity, so much angst, in the world right now. There has been, and I figure if I can encourage people a little bit, even one person who happens to stumble across it, or is one of my followers, just to give people hope. I think that's a lot of one thing that's missing in a lot of people's lives these days. They feel hopeless or discouraged, and so if I can, help that through a blog post, then I've done my job.
Well, I think that's awesome. That's a fantastic mission to have. Absolutely. Jane Friedman tells us that authors are preoccupied with something, writers are preoccupied with something. Would you say that hope is your preoccupation, or is there something else that kind of keeps you wanting to write and explore and create characters?
I think that probably is. Hope is a part of it, but I basically, when people say, well, why do you write? It's just so my head doesn't explode. I mean, just, I do some of my best writing after I go to bed at night. And I just hope that I'll remember what I was, thinking of. I mean, I completed a seed planted. I had gotten to a point where I was stuck and I needed to wrap it up. But I did not want to go through this lengthy epistle of this particular character's life, but I needed to address this issue. It had to be dealt with in wrapping the thing up. And I had gone to bed. I told my husband, I said, I don't know how to. I mean, not that he could help me, because he is baffled by what I do. His brain doesn't work that way. And I'm like, I don't know what to do about this character. I don't know how to get this thing done. And I was laying in bed one night and I couldn't sleep, and all of a sudden I just had this little light bulb above the head that went off. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So I just wrote almost the whole last chapter while lying there in bed. So I always have a narrative or a thought. I mean, I'll find inspiration in the strangest things. I wrote a short story about a junkyard that I passed on the highway between Chapin and Newberry. And I thought, all those cars, all those broken cars have a story if they could talk. And that was the title of my short story, was If They Could Speak. Mm-hmm. And so I'm, kind of weird that way. But I think all writers are kind of weird, quite honestly. I think we have to be.
I am absolutely on the same page with you. And we have these moments sometimes in our conversations where I'll ask you, right? Like, how did the character come to you? Be like, oh, that's the voice that's been in my head. And I'll be like, oh yeah, like I just get that. Writers just know that characters just live in your head. They just, they occupy you.
They do. They are there. Did you see the movie, The Man Who Invented Christmas, about Dickens and A Christmas Carol? Oh, you should find that. It's called The Man Who Invented Christmas. And he's reached this point in his life where he's desperate. He's getting financially challenged. But in the movie, the way they did it, the characters came alive, and they would like show up in his study, and they would just follow him around. And, they were like hassling him, like, okay, what do you do? Where are we going? What are we doing? Right. We're just kind of hanging out here. That was so awesome, because I feel that way sometimes. I feel like some of my characters are going, hello, no, this is not going to work. So, all right. Yep. I talk to them. I talk to my characters. I probably just seal my fate right there with that as a middle case. But anyway.
No. I'm exactly the same way. I got to a stuck place. I love that your story about being in a stuck place. I got to a stuck place. I walked away from the computer and I sat down. I said, okay, tell me what happened.
Yes.
Just tell me, wherever you are, tell me what happened. And then the voice just comes and starts kind of explaining.
Yeah, I'll sit down at the computer sometimes now. I'm, working on the sequel, and I'll just make myself sit down, because if I wait for something to pop into my head, then I will probably never sit down. But I'll just sit down and open it up, and I'll read the previous couple of chapters, that I wrote, to see, where I was. And I'll just kind of sit there and look at the computer. And I'm like, okay. And then something will pop into my head, or I'll pick the character that I want to write about this time. Like, I've done this character and this character, so I need to bring so and so back in. And so I'll think, okay, what would they be doing in this situation now? And then I'll just start writing, and it just comes. It just flows. Like with the seed planted was really kind of funny. I got this nickname, and I can't remember if I saw it somewhere, but the character's nickname is Juju, and I just got that stuck in my head. I'm like, I want to write a story, and I want my character to be named Juju. That's so bizarre. And then I thought, well, she needs to have a real name. What's a real name that you could pull Juju out from? And I started going through, how about Julia? Yeah, that's good. That's good. That'll work, because that fit with the time frame of someone who might have been named Julia, back in that time. So yeah, just, I can't say there's a pattern. There's just these bizarre ideas that jump in my head, and I do something with them, and it comes out in a short story or a book. I wrote a short story about a willow tree that's out my front window. A poem called Willow.
Well, you're definitely in good company with the South Carolina Writers Association, because I think most
I
of us
so.
sort of walk around with characters tapping us on the shoulder, telling us what we need to do, and those poems that come to us where we feel like this is a way to metabolize something or get our thoughts on paper. And so I think you've definitely found your tribe at SCWA.
I think so. I think so.
All right. That's really good stuff. Well, listen, it was really great to meet you, Kat. I hope that we'll finally get to meet in person on November 13th at the Aiken Book Festival. I'm looking forward to that event. And in the meantime, if there's anything I can do to help promote your work, by all means, please reach out and ask, because I love everything about you, writing in Chapin, writing in South Carolina, and sharing your stories with the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. SCWA. If you want to become a member of SCWA and take advantage of Author's Corner, go to myscwa.org, find a chapter near you, get signed up, become part of our crew, and we'll be glad to feature you in your books as well. Thanks again, Kat, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.